Maya Chen had always been methodical about her future. At 18, she possessed the kind of quiet determination that made teachers predict great things and guidance counselors beam with pride. Her acceptance letter to MIT sat framed on her desk, a tangible reminder of years of sacrifice, study, and unwavering focus on her dream of becoming an aerospace engineer. Every Friday after school since she was 15, Maya had worked at Henderson's Hardware, earning $12 an hour organizing inventory and helping customers find the right screws and paint colors. Weekends meant babysitting the Morrison twins next door, an exhausting but lucrative gig that paid every paycheck without fail. She deposited exactly half into what her parents called the college fund, a joint savings account that her father David had opened when she started working. "We're so proud of your dedication," her mother Linda would say, reviewing Maya's deposit slips with an approving nod. "Don't worry, honey. Dad and I are matching every dollar you put in. By the time you graduate, you'll have enough for MIT." Maya trusted them completely. Why wouldn't she? Her parents had always been supportive, attending every academic award ceremony, cheering from the sidelines during her brief stint on the debate team, and proudly displaying her honor roll certificates on the refrigerator. The college fund represented more than money. It was a family project, a symbol of their shared commitment to her future. The acceptance letter from MIT came with a partial scholarship that covered tuition, but room, board, and expenses would require another $80,000 over 4 years. Maya had calculated it precisely. Her contributions plus her parents' matching funds should total exactly $85,000. She had even planned to use the extra $5,000 for her first semester's textbooks and a laptop. 2 weeks before graduation, Maya approached her father in his home office, surrounded by the familiar smell of coffee and the glow of his computer screen. "Dad, I need to start transferring money from the college fund. MIT wants the first year's housing deposit by June." David Chen didn't look up from his computer immediately. When he finally did, his expression was unreadable. "Maya, sweetheart, we need to talk. Let me get your mother." Something cold settled in Maya's stomach. Her father's tone carried a weight she'd never heard before, the sound of bad news barely contained. Linda appeared in the doorway, her face wearing the same strained expression. Maya noticed her mother's hands were shaking slightly as she sat down in the chair across from her. "The thing is," David began, his voice careful and measured, "we had to make some decisions about the money. The house needed work, you know how old the kitchen was, and the master bathroom was practically falling apart. We couldn't ignore it anymore." Maya felt the world tilt. "What do you mean?" "We used the college fund for renovations," Linda said quickly, as if saying it faster would make it less. "But honey, you have to understand, this house is our biggest investment. We've increased the property value by at least $60,000. It's like we've invested in the family's future." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. "All of it? We took out a home equity loan for some of the work," David continued, his businessman's voice explaining away her dreams. "But yes, we needed to use the college fund. The new kitchen, the master suite addition, the landscaping, it's transformed this place." Maya stared at her parents, these people who had raised her, who had promised to match her savings dollar for dollar, who had just admitted to stealing her future. "That was my money. I worked for 3 years. It was our money too," Linda interrupted, defensive now. "We contributed just as much as you did. In this way, we're building equity. When you inherit this house someday, you'll benefit from these improvements." "I don't want to inherit your house," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to go to MIT. You can still go to college," David said, his tone becoming paternal and condescending. "There's a perfectly good community college 20 minutes away. You can live at home, save money, and transfer to a 4-year school later. Lots of successful people start at community college." Maya felt something fundamental break inside her chest. These weren't her parents speaking. These were strangers who had spent years lying to her face, who had watched her work weekend after weekend, who had smiled and nodded as she deposited check after check into what she thought was her future. "You stole from me," she said, the words coming out flat and emotionless. "We didn't steal anything," Linda snapped. "We made a family decision. You're still our daughter, and you'll always have a home here. This renovation benefits everyone." Maya stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. Through the office window, she could see the new stone pathway that led to their expanded back patio, the professional landscaping that had replaced their simple lawn, the bay window that now jutted out from what used to be a modest kitchen. It was beautiful work, $80,000 worth of beautiful work paid for with her dreams. I need to think, she said, and walked out of the room, leaving her parents sitting in their renovated office, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal. For 3 days, Maya barely spoke to her parents. She moved through the house like a ghost, attending her final classes, accepting congratulations from teachers and classmates about MIT with a hollow smile that never reached her eyes. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind cycling through the same devastating loop. 3 years of work, 3 years of trust, 3 years of lies. The worst part wasn't even the money itself, it was the calculated nature of the betrayal. This hadn't been an emergency expense or a moment of weakness. Her parents had planned this renovation for months, maybe years. They had watched her save every penny, had nodded approvingly when she talked about her MIT plans, had even helped her fill out financial aid forms, all while knowing they were going to steal her future. On the 4th day, Maya's numbness began to crystallize into something sharper. She was helping her mother clean out the garage, a task Linda had suggested to keep busy during this difficult time, when she found the manila folder tucked behind paint cans. The label read, Home Improvements 2023-2024 in her father's neat handwriting. Maya's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were invoices, contracts, and receipts spanning 18 months. Kitchen renovation $28,000, Master Suite Edition $35,000. The numbers swam before her eyes, each one representing weeks of her life spent stocking shelves and chasing toddlers around playgrounds. But it was the timeline that made her blood run cold. The first invoice was dated March 2023, 6 months before her parents had even mentioned the renovations to her. They had been planning this theft while she was working her junior year jobs, while she was applying to colleges, while she was dreaming of her future. At the bottom of the folder, she found something that made her stomach drop, a home equity loan application for an additional $20,000. Approved just 3 months ago. They hadn't even stopped at stealing her money, they had borrowed more to fund their renovation fantasy. Maya sat on the garage floor, surrounded by the evidence of her parents' deception, and felt something new growing inside her chest. Not just anger, but a cold, calculating fury that demanded justice. That evening, she locked her bedroom door and opened her laptop. If her parents could plan and scheme, so could she. If they could research contractors and loan options, she could research her legal options. She started with the basics: minors' rights to savings account, parents using child's money, legal recourse for stolen funds. The results were mostly discouraging, since she had been a minor when making the deposits, and since her parents' names were on the account, they had legal access to the funds. A few forums suggested she could sue for conversion, but lawyers were expensive and outcomes uncertain. Maya dug deeper, following link after link, reading about property law, contract disputes, and civil remedies. She learned about mechanics' liens, legal claims against property for unpaid work or material. She read about how contractors could protect themselves from non-payment, how handymen could secure their compensation through the very property they had improved. An idea began to form in her mind, dangerous, complex, but potentially brilliant. Her parents had used her money to increase their property value. What if she could use that same property to get her money back? She researched late into the night, taking careful notes about lien laws, contractor licensing, and the legal requirements for placing a claim against real estate. She discovered that in their state, even small contractors could file liens for unpaid work, and that the process was designed to be accessible to legitimate tradespeople. Maya closed her laptop as dawn broke outside her window. For the first time in a week, she felt something other than despair. She felt the stirring of a plan, not just revenge, but justice served through the same legal system that had failed to protect her college fund. Her parents had taught her an important lesson about trust and family. Now she was going to teach them one about consequences and the law. Maya's high school graduation came and went in a blur of forced smiles and deflected questions about her college plans. While her classmates celebrated their futures, Maya was methodically constructing hers from the wreckage of her parents' betrayal. The first step was practical: she needed money and time. Maya called MIT's admissions office and requested a gap year deferral, citing family financial circumstances. The admissions counselor was sympathetic and assured her that her spot would be held for the following year. Her parents seemed relieved by this news, probably hoping she would forget about MIT entirely and settle for community college. Maya had no intention of forgetting anything. She quit her part-time job at Henderson's Hardware and found full-time work at a local construction supply company. The pay was better, $18 an hour, and more importantly, it gave her access to contractors, suppliers, and industry knowledge. She spent her lunch breaks talking to experienced tradesmen about the business side of construction work, learning about permits, contracts, and the legal protections available to contractors. Within a month, Maya had saved enough money to consult with a lawyer, not about her stolen college fund, which would be expensive to pursue and difficult to prove, but about starting a legitimate contracting business. The lawyer, Mrs. Patterson, was impressed by Maya's preparation and research. "You understand that as a contractor, you'll have the right to file mechanics liens for unpaid work?" Mrs. Patterson asked during their consultation. "Yes," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. "I've researched the requirements thoroughly. Proper contracts, documented work, reasonable payment terms, and following the notification procedures." Mrs. Patterson helped Maya file the necessary paperwork to establish Shen Home Services. Maya obtained her business license, liability insurance, and a basic contractor's permit that would allow her to perform minor home improvements. Everything was completely legitimate. She had no intention of running a scam or breaking any law. The second phase of her plan required patience and performance. Maya began offering her services to neighbors, starting with small jobs, painting fences, installing shelving, basic carpentry work. She had learned many of these skills helping her father with projects over the years, and YouTube tutorials filled in the gaps. Her prices were reasonable, her work quality was excellent, and most importantly, she documented everything meticulously. Miss Morrison, the neighbor whose twins Maya had babysat for years, was her first customer. Maya built custom storage solutions for the twins' playroom, providing detailed contracts, before and after photos, and invoices that clearly outlined payment terms. When Miss Morrison paid promptly and left a glowing review, Maya felt the first stirring of confidence in her plan. Over the next 4 months, Maya built a modest but legitimate reputation in the neighborhood. She installed crown molding for the Hendersons, built a deck storage bench for the Liens, and painted the Johnsons' garage. Each job was properly contracted, professionally completed, and fairly priced. Maya was genuinely good at the work, and her customers appreciated her attention to detail and reliability. More importantly, she was learning the business inside and out. She understood how to write contracts that protected her interests, how to document work progress, and how to establish clear payment terms. She studied the state's mechanics lien statutes until she could recite them from memory, and she consulted with Miss Patterson regularly to ensure every aspect of her business remained legally sound. By October, Maya was ready for the most crucial phase of her plan. She approached her parents one evening, as they admired their renovated kitchen, the granite countertops gleaming under the new pendant lights that had cost more than Maya's entire summer earnings. "Mom, Dad," she said, settling into one of their new bar stools, "I've been thinking about what you said, about this being a family investment, and all of us benefiting from the improvements." David looked up from his tablet, surprised. This was the first time Maya had voluntarily discussed the renovations without anger or resentment. "I'm glad you're starting to understand, honey," Linda said, her voice cautious but hopeful. "I've been working in construction," Maya continued, "and I've learned a lot about home improvement. I was thinking there are some finishing touches we could add that would really make the renovations shine. Custom built-ins, some detailed trim work, maybe some electrical updates for the new spaces." David leaned forward, interested. "What kind of finishing touch?" Maya pulled out her tablet, showing them photos from her other jobs. "I could build custom shelving for the master suite, install under-cabinet lighting in the kitchen, add some detailed molding work. Since it's family, I could do it at cost, just materials and a small labor fee." Her parents exchanged glances. The idea of getting professional quality work from their daughter at a discount was appealing, especially since Maya seemed to be moving past her anger about the college fund. "You know what?" David said, "that sounds like a great idea. It would be nice to have you involved in improving the house." Maya smiled, but inside she felt like a chess player moving her pieces into position. "Perfect, I'll draw up a contract, just to keep everything professional. We can spread the work out over a few months, and I'll give you very reasonable payment terms." Over the following weeks, Maya systematically worked on various projects throughout her parents' house. She installed beautiful floating shelves in the master bedroom, added elegant crown molding to the dining room, and created a custom entertainment center in the living room. The work was genuinely excellent. Maya took pride in her craftsmanship, regardless of her ultimate intention. Each project was properly documented with detailed contracts that specified materials, labor, and payment terms. Maya's standard payment schedule allowed 30 days from completion, which was generous by industry standard. Her parents signed each contract without much thought, trusting their daughter and appreciating the family discount. As Maya worked, she listened to her parents discuss their upcoming European vacation, a 3-week trip to Italy and France they had planned for the following spring. They had been saving for this trip for years, and Maya noted the dates carefully. The timing would be perfect. The final project was the most complex, a custom closet organization system for the Master Suite edition. Maya designed an elaborate system of shelves, drawers, and hanging spaces that would take 3 weeks to complete. She scheduled the work to be finished exactly 1 day before her parents' departure for Europe. The contract for this final project was for $15,000, a substantial sum that reflected the complexity and quality of the work. Combined with her previous projects, Maya's total billing for all the work would reach exactly. As Maya put the finishing touches on the closet system, her parents were busy packing for their dream vacation. They praised her work, marveled at the transformation of their home, and promised to pay her final invoice as soon as they returned from Europe. Maya smiled and assured them there was no rush. After all, she had given them 30 days to pay, and what was a few weeks between family members. The day her parents left for the airport, Maya sat in her bedroom with Mrs. Patterson's business card and a stack of properly executed contracts. In 31 days, if her parents hadn't paid their final invoice, she would have the legal right to file a mechanic's lien against their property. And Maya had already calculated that her parents would still be in Italy on day 31, blissfully unaware that their daughter had just become their largest creditor. Maya filed the mechanic's lien at exactly 9 a.m. on the 31st day after her final invoice. She had dressed professionally for the occasion, a navy blazer and crisp white shirt that made her look older than her 19 years. The clerk at the county recorder's office processed the paperwork with routine efficiency, stamping the documents that would legally encumber her parents' property for $80,000 in unpaid contracting work. The property owner will be notified by certified mail, the clerk explained, sliding copies of the filed documents across the counter. They'll have the right to dispute the lien or arrange payment. Maya thanked her and walked out of the courthouse feeling a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. There was no going back now. In 3 days, when her parents returned from their Italian adventure, they would find a very different world waiting for them. The certified mail notice arrived on a Tuesday. Maya was working in her makeshift home office when she heard her father's key in the front door, followed by the sound of rolling suitcases and her mother's voice discussing jet lag. 20 minutes later, she heard David's sharp intake of breath from the kitchen. "What the hell is this?" His voice carried through the house with a tone Maya had never heard before, equal parts confusion and rage. Maya walked downstairs to find her parents standing in their renovated kitchen, still wearing their travel clothes, staring at the official notice in her father's hands. "Maya," Linda said, her voice strained. "What is this document about a lien on our house?" "It's exactly what it says," Maya replied calmly, settling into one of their bar stools. "I filed a mechanic's lien for the $80,000 you owe me for contracting work." David's face flushed red. "This is insane. You can't put a lien on our house. You're our daughter. I'm also a licensed contractor who performed work under legitimate contracts that you signed," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You haven't paid your invoices, so I exercised my legal right to secure payment through the property I improved." "We said we'd pay you when we got back from vacation," Linda protested. "Actually, you said you'd pay me when you got back, but the contracts specify 30 days from completion. That deadline passed 3 days ago." Maya pulled out her tablet, showing them the payment schedule clearly outlined in each signed contract. "I sent reminder notices to your email, but I assume you were too busy sightseeing to check them." David stared at the contracts, his businessman's mind recognizing the legal language even as his father's heart recoiled from the implications. "You planned this. You deliberately scheduled the work so we'd be gone when payment was due." "I scheduled the work according to your availability and preferences," Maya said. "The payment terms were standard industry practice. If you had paid on time, there would be no lien." This is blackmail, Linda's voice cracked with emotion. You're holding our house hostage. I'm protecting my legal interests as a contractor, Maya corrected. Just like you protected your financial interests when you stole my college fund. The comparison hit like a physical blow. David set the papers down with shaking hands. That's completely different. We're your parents. We made a family decision, and I made a business decision, Maya interrupted. You taught me that family money is just money, and that financial decisions should be practical rather than emotional. I learned that lesson very well. Over the following days, Maya watched her parents cycle through the stages of crisis management. First came denial. They insisted the lien was somehow invalid or that Maya had made a mistake. David called his lawyer, who confirmed that the lien was properly filed and legally enforceable. Then came bargaining. They offered to pay Maya in installments, to take out another loan, to negotiate a reduced amount. Maya declined each offer, explaining that she needed the full amount for her college expenses and that partial payments wouldn't resolve the lien. The anger phase was the most difficult. Her parents alternated between fury and wounded betrayal, accusing Maya of being vindictive, ungrateful, and cruel. They pointed out that she had lived in their house, eaten their food, and benefited from their support for 19 years. You want to know what's cruel? Maya finally said during one particularly heated argument. Watching your child work herself to exhaustion for 3 years, knowing you're going to steal every penny she earns. You sat at this table and watched me plan my future, knowing you had already spent it on granite countertops. The community impact was perhaps the most devastating aspect for her parents. Word spread quickly through their neighborhood. The same neighbors who had hired Maya and praised her work now knew why she had started her business. Miss Morrison, who had been Linda's book club friend for years, coldly mentioned that she thought Maya was remarkably resourceful, given the circumstances. At the hardware store where Maya had worked, employees who had known the family for years began treating David and Linda with barely concealed disapproval. The story had a compelling narrative that resonated with anyone who had ever felt betrayed by someone they trusted. We can't show our faces anywhere, Linda complained to Maya one evening. People are talking about us like we're criminals. You're not criminals, Maya agreed. You're just parents who stole their daughter's college fund and are now facing the consequence. The financial pressure intensified as her parents discovered the practical implications of the lien. They couldn't refinance their mortgage, couldn't take out a home equity loan, and couldn't sell the property without resolving the lien first. The very renovations they had prioritized over Maya's education now trapped them in a house they couldn't leverage. David's attempts to fight the lien legally proved expensive and futile. His lawyer confirmed that Maya's contracts were ironclad, her work was documented, and her business practices were completely legitimate. Fighting the lien would cost more than paying it, with no guarantee of success. She's got us, David admitted to Linda one night, unaware that Maya could hear them through the thin walls of their renovated home. Every I is dotted, every T is crossed. She turned our own house into a weapon against us. Maya lay in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the awards and certificates that had once represented her bright future, listening to her parents grapple with the reality of their situation. She felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but at the cost of any pretense of family harmony. The lien had accomplished exactly what Maya had intended. It had forced her parents to confront the true cost of their betrayal. They couldn't ignore her, couldn't minimize her loss, and couldn't escape the consequences of their choices. The renovated house they had prioritized over her education had become a beautiful prison, and Maya held the key. But as the weeks passed and the family conflict deepened, Maya began to wonder if the price of her revenge might be higher than she had anticipated. Victory was supposed to feel better than this. The breaking point came on a gray February morning, exactly 3 months after Maya had filed the lien. Her parents had been living in a state of suspended animation, unable to move forward with their lives while the legal cloud hung over their property, yet unwilling to admit defeat and pay what they owed. Maya was reviewing her MIT course catalog when her phone rang. It was Miss Patterson, her lawyer, calling with unexpected news. Maya, I just got a call from your parents' attorney. They're threatening to declare bankruptcy to discharge the lien. I need you to understand, if they file Chapter 7, you might lose everything. The lien could be voided and you'd become just another unsecured creditor. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. She had researched liens extensively, but bankruptcy hadn't been part of her calculations. Can they do that? It's possible, though it would be financially devastating for them. They'd lose the house, destroy their credit, and still might not escape the debt entirely. But desperate people make desperate choices. After hanging up, Maya sat in her room staring at the MIT acceptance letter that still hung above her desk. Had she pushed too hard? Had her quest for justice driven her parents to the edge of financial ruin? That evening, Maya's grandmother called the house. Lien Chen was 87 years old, sharp as a tack, and had never been one to stay out of family business. She had heard about the lien through the extended family network and had decided it was time to intervene. "I'm coming for dinner tomorrow," Lien announced to Linda over the phone, "and I expect everyone to be there. It's time this family had a real conversation." The next evening, Maya's extended family gathered in the renovated dining room that had been partially funded by her stolen college money. Uncle James and Aunt Sarah sat uncomfortably on one side of the table, while Maya's cousins texted quietly on their phones, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Lien arrived wearing her best dress and carrying a manila envelope. She surveyed the renovated space with a critical eye before settling into the chair at the head of the table. "Beautiful kitchen," she said to David and Linda, her voice carrying an edge. "I hope it was worth it." David started to speak, but Lien held up a weathered hand. "I've heard both sides of this story, and I have something to say." "David, Linda, you raised a brilliant daughter. Valedictorian, MIT scholarship, hardworking, responsible, and you betrayed her trust in the most fundamental way possible." "Mom, you don't understand the financial pressures," David began. "I understand perfectly," Lien interrupted. "I understand that you had a choice between your daughter's future and your own comfort, and you chose comfort. I understand that you lied to her for years, letting her work herself to exhaustion while you planned to steal her money." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "We thought we were making a good investment in granite countertops." Lien's voice rose with indignation. "In a master bathroom with heated floors, while your daughter worked weekends to pay for her education." Maya watched her grandmother's righteous anger with fascination. This was the first time any extended family member had directly addressed what her parents had done. "And Maya," Lien turned to her granddaughter, "you've shown remarkable intelligence and determination. You've also shown that you can be just as ruthless as your parents when it serves your purposes." The criticism stung, but Maya met her grandmother's gaze steadily. "I have something for you," Lien continued, opening the manila envelope. "I've been saving for your education since you were 10 years old. It's not much, about $15,000, but it's yours." She slid a savings account statement across the table. "Your parents aren't the only ones who can plan for your future." Maya stared at the numbers, her vision blurring with unexpected tears. "Grandma, I can't." "You can and you will," Lien said firmly. "But first, this family is going to have an honest conversation about what happened and how we fix it." The confrontation that followed was unlike anything the Chen family had ever experienced. Years of polite restraint and face-saving politeness evaporated as the truth of the situation was laid bare. Uncle James revealed that he had lent David money for part of the renovations, money that had never been repaid. Aunt Sarah admitted that she had suspected something was wrong when Maya suddenly deferred MIT but had been too polite to ask. "You want to know what's really shameful?" Lien asked her son. "It's not that you made a mistake, it's that you made a deliberate choice to steal from your daughter and then tried to make her feel guilty for wanting justice." The emotional pressure finally cracked David's composure. "I know what we did was wrong," he said, his voice breaking, "but the renovations were supposed to increase the house value. We thought Maya would benefit eventually." "No," Maya interrupted, her voice stronger than she had felt in months. "You thought you could get away with it. You thought I would just accept community college and move on. You thought I was too young or too trusting to fight back." "Maya, please." Linda reached across the table, but Maya pulled back. "I worked 3 jobs some weeks. I saved every penny for 3 years. I trusted you completely, and you watched me do it knowing you were going to steal everything I earned." The room fell silent, except for Linda's quiet sobbing. David sat with his head in his hands, finally confronting the full weight of what they had done to their daughter. "I want to know," Maya continued, her voice steady despite her tears. "Did you ever feel guilty, even once, when you watched me counting my savings, when you helped me apply for financial aid, when you smiled and nodded about matching my contributions? Did you ever feel bad about lying to me?" David looked up, his face haggard. "Every day. Every single day." but we had already started the renovations, and you thought your comfort was more important than my future. Maya finished. The confrontation reached its peak when David suddenly clutched his chest, his face going pale. I can't breathe. Dad? Maya jumped up, her anger instantly replaced by concern. Uncle James, a retired EMT, quickly assessed the situation. It's a panic attack, not a heart attack. David, you need to breathe slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. As her father struggled to regain his composure, Maya realized that her revenge had pushed the family to a breaking point. The satisfaction she had expected from her parents' suffering was overshadowed by the genuine fear that she might have gone too far. I never wanted to hurt you, Maya said quietly, as David's breathing stabilized. I just wanted you to understand what you did to me. I wanted you to feel what I felt. We do understand, Linda said through her tears. We've understood for months. We just didn't know how to fix it. Lien, who had watched the entire confrontation with the wisdom of someone who had lived through decades of family drama, finally spoke. Understanding is the first step. Now we need to talk about making this right. The family sat in the beautiful dining room, surrounded by the renovations that had torn them apart, and finally began to have the honest conversation they should have had a year ago. Maya realized that her perfectly executed revenge had brought them to this moment. Not just her parents' surrender, but a reckoning with the kind of family they had become, and the family they wanted to be. The lien had been her weapon, but this conversation would determine whether it had been worth wielding. The agreement they reached that night was not the complete vindication Maya had imagined, but it was something more valuable, a path forward that acknowledged both the harm done and the cost of revenge. David and Linda agreed to take out a second mortgage to pay for Maya's MIT education, the full $80,000 she needed for 4 years, plus an additional $15,000 to cover the gap year expenses and interest on her delayed enrollment. They would also publicly acknowledge their mistake to the extended family and close friends, admitting that they had misappropriated Maya's college fund for home improvements. In return, Maya agreed to remove the lien and accept a structured payment plan that would begin immediately. The first payment would cover her upcoming MIT expenses, allowing her to enroll in the fall semester as planned. But I want you to understand something, Maya said as they formalized the agreement with Mrs. Patterson, present via video call. This isn't forgiveness. This is a business transaction. You stole from me, I took legal action, and now you're paying what you owe. We can work on forgiveness later, but first you need to make this right. Her parents nodded, both looking older than they had a year ago. The stress of the lien, the community judgment, and the family confrontation had taken its toll, but there was also something resembling relief in their expressions. The burden of their secret was finally lifted. The public acknowledgement proved to be almost as difficult for David and Linda as the financial payment. At the next neighborhood barbecue, hosted by the Liens, they quietly approached several families to explain the situation and apologize for any awkwardness Maya's contracting work might have caused. We made some poor financial decisions that affected our daughter's college plans, Linda explained to Mrs. Morrison, her voice carefully controlled. Maya started her business to help with her expenses, and we're proud of how resourceful she's been. It was a sanitized version of events, but it acknowledged their responsibility and Maya's legitimacy as a contractor. Several neighbors who had already heard various versions of the story appreciated the direct approach. Maya watched these interactions with mixed feelings. Part of her wanted her parents to face harsher judgment, to experience more consequences for their betrayal. But another part of her, the part that had grown up in this community, that remembered barbecues and block parties where everyone was family, was relieved that they were finding a way forward that didn't destroy everything. The financial arrangements proved more complex than anyone had anticipated. The second mortgage application required extensive documentation, including verification of Maya's contracting business and the legitimate nature of the debt. Maya found herself in the surreal position of having to prove to bank underwriters that her parents owed her money for work performed on their own house. Miss Patterson guided them through the process with professional efficiency, ensuring that every aspect of the settlement was properly documented. This is actually a textbook case of how liens are supposed to work, she told Maya during one of their final meetings. A contractor performs work, documents it properly, and uses legal remedies to secure payment. The fact that it's family makes it emotionally complicated, but legally, you did everything right. Maya started MIT in September, a year later than planned, but with a deeper understanding of legal systems. business practices, and family dynamics than most of her 18-year-old classmates. Her dorm room was modest compared to some of her wealthier peers, but every piece of furniture and school supply represented money she had earned and fought for. Her relationship with her parents evolved slowly and awkwardly. They spoke regularly, but the easy trust of her childhood was gone. Phone calls were polite but careful, focusing on her classes, her professors, and safe topics that didn't venture into emotional territory. During winter break, Maya returned home to find that her parents had made subtle changes to the house. The dining room table now displayed a framed photo from her high school graduation, the three of them smiling together, taken just days before she discovered the empty college fund. It was a strange choice, preserving a moment of happiness that had been built on lies. Why this picture? Maya asked her mother. Linda paused in her cooking, considering her words carefully. Because it reminds us who we used to be, and who we want to be again. Maya's contracting business had grown during her first semester at MIT. She continued to take small jobs during breaks and summers, partly for the money but mostly because she discovered she genuinely enjoyed the work. Her reputation in the neighborhood had evolved from the girl who put a lien on her parents' house to the college student who does excellent home improvement work. The transformation was perhaps most evident in her relationship with her grandmother. Lien had become one of Maya's strongest supporters, proudly telling anyone who would listen about her granddaughter's legal victory and business acumen. "You taught your parents an important lesson," Lien told Maya during a Sunday dinner in the spring. "But more importantly, you taught yourself that you don't have to be a victim, even when people you trust betray you. You have options." Maya nodded, though she still struggled with the emotional aftermath of her revenge. The lien had been removed, the money had been paid, and her education was secure, but the family dynamics remained forever altered. During her sophomore year, Maya found herself in a family law class, studying cases involving mechanics' liens, contract disputes, and parent-child financial relationships. When the professor discussed a case remarkably similar to her own situation, Maya felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. "The interesting aspect of this case," the professor noted, "is how the plaintiff used completely legal means to address what was essentially a family betrayal. It raises questions about whether legal remedies are always the best solution to personal problems." Maya thought about that question often. Had the lien been the right choice? It had achieved its practical goal. Her parents had paid for her education, acknowledged their wrongdoing, and learned that their actions had consequences. But it had also fundamentally changed their family in ways that couldn't be undone. By her junior year, Maya had begun to see her story differently. The lien hadn't just been revenge, it had been education. She had learned to research legal options, to document her work, to stand up for herself, and to navigate complex emotional and financial relations. These skills served her well in her engineering studies, her business ventures, and her personal relationships. Her parents had learned lessons too. David became more cautious about financial decisions, consulting Maya before making major purchases. Linda joined a book club focused on financial literacy, determined to understand money management better. They never again made a major financial decision without considering its impact on the entire family. The house still bore the beautiful renovations that had started the conflict, but they had taken on a different meaning. The granite countertops and custom built-ins no longer represented stolen dreams. They represented the price of broken trust and the cost of rebuilding. Maya graduated from MIT summa cum laude, with job offers from 3 aerospace companies, and acceptance to a prestigious graduate program. At her graduation party, held in the backyard of the renovated house, she looked around at her family and neighbors gathered to celebrate her achievement. Her parents had paid for this education twice, once with her stolen college fund, and once with their pride and community standing. Maya had fought for it with intelligence, determination, and a carefully executed legal strategy that had taught everyone involved about justice, consequences, and the true cost of betrayal. "I'm proud of you," David told her that evening, his voice carrying the weight of everything they had been through. "Not just for graduating, but for standing up for yourself. You taught us that you won't be taken advantage of." Maya smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. "I learned from the best," she said. "You taught me that sometimes the people you trust most will disappoint you, but you also taught me that I'm strong enough to handle it." The lien had been removed years ago, but its lessons remained. Maya had discovered that revenge, when executed with intelligence and legal precision, could indeed deliver justice, but she had also learned that the most satisfying victories were the ones that created space for healing,
growth and the possibility of redemption. As she prepared to start her career as an aerospace engineer, Maya carried with her the knowledge that she could handle betrayal, navigate complex legal systems, and build something valuable from the wreckage of broken trust. These skills, learned in the crucible of family conflict, would serve her well in whatever challenges lay ahead. The renovated house stood as a monument to both destruction and rebuilding, a reminder that families like homes could be damaged by poor choices but rebuilt with patience, honesty, and the determination to do better.